In our previous video tutorial, we had a brief introduction with the contract document. Now in continuation with the first part of the contract document, we will get into detailed synopsis of the same with each point discussed in detail. So let's begin. The scope of work mutually decided by the client and the designer is subject to change on the basis of the budget of the client or after the client goes through the quotation of the designer. These changes generally occur during the initial meetings. It would be appropriate to attach the final scope of work to the contract document for better clarity.
The sequence of work. It is a vast topic of discussion, but for the sake of contract document we will talk about highlights of it. A detailed tutorial will be available later on this topic. Sequence of work will mainly depend on the type of project it is, whether new interior design assignment or a renovation project. Depending on the same, a designer decides which services are required. To make it very easy to understand, we have classified these services under two subcategories, which is the hard part and the lesser hard part. Generally, hard part is where all civil work related activities are involved. The lesser hard part is where all non-civil work related activities are involved. Generally, first priority is always given to the tough and time-consuming jobs and then all other services. In any renovation project, there will always be more services required than any new project. The sequence of work can be decided accordingly by the designer, as it is obvious that the client will be unaware of the facts related to sequential site planning or project management.
Though the quotation is already provided before the contract document, but attaching the same with the contract document will provide more transparency about what the designer quoted in the quotation and what is actually finalized at the contract document stage. Letter of appointment signed by the client will provide the authority to lead the project, as it designates the position of the designer to take any crucial site decisions. In case the client has hired unknown vendors, there is a chance that those vendors do not acknowledge the authority of the designer. Letter of appointment provides that significance of authority to the designer.
There are a lot of speculations and confusions related to the quality of the materials. India is a huge market for the materials required for interior design, decor and furnishing. If any specific product is trending in the market, then immediately multiple variants of the same product are into the market in no time. It becomes tough to identify the superior and the inferior quality of the product due to their effective marketing techniques. As everyone in the market promotes and claims their product to be the better than others. The client is less aware about the market, so they are dependent on the designers to make sure the materials used on the site are of good quality. The best way to ensure this is by attaching a detailed specification sheet with the contract for all the services and products required for the proposed interior design assignment. The specifications list can be in following categories: services, brand, make, product code, size, if applicable, warranty, and its ongoing market rate. This will help the client to select materials without confusion and hassle-free for the designer.
Enlisting the vendors and service providers with respect to the final scope of work. Planning the sequential engagement of the vendors. Vendor engagement clauses can differ from vendor to vendor or agency to agency, but few common points in the vendor engagement for all vendors are as shared below: the site protocol, code of conduct for the vendors, contractors and their team of labor, do's and don'ts, stages related to assigned scope of work to the vendors, stages of payment of the vendors.
Site limitations is a very crucial aspect which is highly ignored by most of the designers before they commit to the client regarding the timeline or the deadline of the project. Site limitations can differ from site to site, but few common points are shared below. Is the client residing the site already? Site accessibility, in terms of access permission for the laborers and contractors before they start site execution. Site accessibility, related to material transport, lead and lift and any other challenge. Site accessibility, the narrow staircases are a pain to lift the heavy kitchen counters or big furniture articles to the site. Width of the doors, availability of the elevators and size of the elevators. More points can be explored as per the site. Material dumping and storage, sometimes there is not enough space to store the raw material required for site execution. Labor accommodation, the deadline of the project is directly proportional to the fact that if the labor is allowed to stay at the site and work, or they have to daily commute from site to their accommodation.
It is the designer who has to aware the client for their roles and responsibilities. Generally, once the job is assigned, the client thinks it is only the designer who is responsible for everything. But there are some points which the client is actually responsible to get it sorted for the designer in order to keep the process uninterrupted. Let's see what these points are. 1. Society-related permissions and clearances. In case it's an apartment project, most of the times it is mandatory to get no objection from the society members before the work is started. The designer has zero role in this. All the compliance is to be done by the client. 2. If the client has hired any unknown vendors or contractors with whom the designer has not had working experience in the past, then the designer is not liable for the quality of materials or quality of work or timeline of the project. 3. About the payments to be done to the vendors directly hired by the client, the designer has zero role in liability. The sole risk will be of the client. 4. Any conflicting situation arises during the site execution by external factors, neighborhood, that result in stopping the site execution, then client has to resolve the same. More points can be explored, as these are just the few amongst the frequent challenges the designer faces. Role of the designer is very significant. It starts from the day he or she is shortlisted by the client. Role of the designer can be variable from site to site depending upon the scope of work, site conditions and type of assignment. For example, if the project assignment is a design-only task, then the designer is not liable for any other site execution-related activity. The designer is only responsible to design and deliver the proposal in time. On the other hand, if the project assignment is end-to-end turnkey contract, then involvement of the designer extends further as a project manager who incorporates all site-related tasks like quality of materials, quality of site execution, vendor management and related procedure during and post-execution. The approach of the designer should be practical, realistic and precise in framing the clauses related to his or her roles and responsibilities so that the client does not over-expect from the designer. Do's and don'ts can be variable, like the client should not engage another designer if he or she has already hired one designer who is already working on the assignment. Technically, this is a breach of contract from the client's side. The client is always excited to see the site progress when it comes to site execution. So, the client entering the site during execution should follow the safety parameters and use the necessary safety gear to visit the site. Client should avoid direct interaction with the laborers working on the site. Client should not pay the laborers without intimation to the designer. If there are any changes during the site execution, the client should not do it without informing to the designer. Bringing elderly family members, pets, infants and babies on the site should be avoided for their own safety. The client should focus on what priorities they have with respect to design, rather than inviting friends and neighbors to the site and taking their suggestions and then make changes on site. This will make the client more confused rather than finding solution that they are looking for and need in reality. The client will only end up paying more to the labor, waste of material, time and money if the changes are made during the site execution. There will be more points on do's and don'ts for the clients depending on the site conditions on different sites. Though the professional fees are already shared with the client in the quotation which is provided to them prior to the contract agreement, but the client can negotiate with the designer regarding the professional fees in meeting prior to sign up of the contract. Multiple factors can be responsible for that, like budget restrictions of the client or alterations in the scope of work. So, it's always better to attach a final professional fees approved by the client and stages of payment of the professional fees with the contract document. Generally, if a designer visits the site, then only it is considered as a site visit. But if the designer visit to a display center or showroom or a store to guide the client for material selection, then most of the times this is considered as a complimentary service from the designer for the client, and the designer end up in a very awkward spot as the client makes the designer visit the stores and showrooms multiple times. To avoid these small inconsiderate factors, it will be more professional if the designer respect their own time and provide the client a detailed schedule of site visit. Then it may be once a week or twice that can be decided by the designer. Clauses of termination are required in any contract if the contract is breached by either of the signing parties. These clauses justify either side who is at loss and help them reimburse in whichever best way possible. Advance written notice given to one another in such a scenario will help to dissolve the contract document. This should be formally done on letterheads or official emails. A notice period is to be decided by both the signing parties mutually. It can be 15 days or a month in advance. This can be customized as per the site and scope related to it. Any formal document is useless without the validity clauses. Validity clauses provide the contract a certain sense of timeline. It is very important to mention the date of effect from which the contract document will come into legal existence, and when is the date when this contract is considered completed or null and void. Thank you for watching this video tutorial. In our upcoming video tutorial we will be talking on different types of interior design assignments. Please subscribe to our channel, Design Space India, for more such informational videos. Leave your suggestions and feedback in the comment section. Please like and share if you find our videos helpful. You may also follow us on Instagram and Facebook. This is a humble effort to bring ethical practices with unbiased opinions through this channel for both clients and designers. Stay tuned for more informational videos. See you next time.